Yep, it says webinar is now streaming live. It says on YouTube.
Yep, it's just finishing the loading bar, but it looks like we are good.
804.
So I believe
We're
we are,
missing Heather and Tim right now. Is that right?
this is Tim. I'm the on the host account.
Okay.
Heather said she'd be late. I got email from her earlier.
Do we want to wait for her, or is she gonna be late?
I think we should
So
start.
we have a quorum, so.
Yeah, okay. All right, if everybody's ready, it's 8:04. I'd like to call the meeting to order. First out of the gate, we have to select a scribe. It's my understanding Lisa has volunteered to do that this evening. Thank you, Lisa. I think I'm pretty much going to try and follow the agenda as closely as I can. I want to flip number 3 and 4 because I think we should have the election first before we do anything further. So as mentioned in the last meeting, we're going to have an election right out of the gate, and we need to have nominations for chairman, vice chairman, and it's my understanding that the scribe position was going to be shared by everybody, so we're not going to have a formal position there. So do we have any nominations for chairman?
I would like to nominate Peter Goodney.
Peter Goodney's being nominated. Do we have any further nominations for chairman? Those being none, do we have any nominations for vice chairman?
I
would like to
nominate Peter Lapine.
Okay, I would like to nominate Tim as well. Lisa, do you have all these names? Who's nominating who?
So for vice chairman, Tim Fling and Peter Lapine.
And who nominated each one?
Oh, sorry. So Lee, did you nominate Peter?
I did.
Okay. And Peter, did you nominate Tim?
Yes, I did.
Okay, great.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay. So why don't we, I guess the chairman's race is kind of mute, but we'll have a formal vote, I guess. All those in favor of Pete Goodney being the chairman?
Do we need a second for any of these motions? I don't know if that's a necessity or not.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. Anybody want to second that? The motion's
second
on the floor. How about the motion for Mr. Lapine being the vice chairman? Do we have a second?
Second.
How about the motion for Mr. Fling to be the vice chair? Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Okay, having everything everything has been seconded. We'll have a roll call for the vote for chairman. Myself, Peter Goodney. I'll just go down the list. Joan Mello. She's not here, right? Joan Mello.
I'm here
Yes.
for vice chair, right?
Oh, for chairman. We're gonna do-
Aye.
Okay. Lee Perrin,
Aye.
Tim Fling,
Aye.
Peter Lapine,
Aye.
and Lisa's, Cynthia Foster's not here yet, right?
No, I'm here.
Oh, Cynthia Foster
Aye.
and Lisa Dunderdale.
Aye.
Okay. Sounds like that's unanimous. Now we're going to go on to vice chair. All those in favor of Mr. Lapine? Joan Mello?
Aye, just because we're here because of him, I guess.
Excuse me?
Aye.
Okay. Lee Perrin?
Aye.
Tim Fling?
No.
Peter Lapine? I guess, can you vote for yourself?
You may.
Yeah. Lisa Dunderdale?
Aye.
Cynthia Foster?
No.
And I will do a no too. What is the count on that?
4 yes and 3 no.
Okay, majority rules on that. Mr. Lapine is the vice president.
Vice Chair.
Vice Chair, sorry. I had to shut the lights off. There's too much lights in here. It gives too much glare, so I'm kind of half in the dark. So the next order of business will be the approval of meeting minutes. And as long as those corrections are made, as Mr. Perrin stated earlier, I'd like to move that we accept those minutes as presented. Do I have a motion to a second for that?
Second.
Okay, that's been seconded by, who was seconded that?
Peter Lapine.
Okay, Mr. Lapine seconded that. Put that to a vote. All those in favor? Do, Mr. Haggerty, on Zoom, can we just show our hands, or do I have to do a formal roll call on Zoom?
Has to be a roll call, and you're actually supposed to start the meeting with a roll call vote of everyone who's present.
Okay. All right. Joan, do you accept those meeting minutes?
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Peter, Lapine,
Aye.
Lisa,
Aye.
Cynthia,
Aye.
and myself. So those have been approved. Let's see. So I just want to share with you guys regarding the last meeting. I was not prepared. I didn't really know much about it. I just wanted to apologize for that. I want to thank you for electing me as the chairman. I did reach out the next day. I believe that meeting was on a Thursday. I did reach out Friday to the town hall, got my email straightened out, and I learned the whole process about how to do a modern committee meeting with Zoom and so forth. It is rather technical because you have to post the meeting virtually. So I met with the IT department, and at the time, Tim was the person that had assumed responsibility. So I chose that, since he had that ability, to just keep him doing that. Just to let everybody know, how that happened. He was in with the IT, he had all the clearances to basically run the meeting as he's doing tonight. And also, in conjunction with posting meetings, that has to be coordinated with the town clerk. So not the IT department and the town clerk both have to be on board, obviously, to post it in the virtual calendar and to post it in the regular, I guess, I don't know if they hang it or what they do. But so Tim and I are going to coordinate that effort, and Tim's going to be the one basically posting the meeting. So you may see the meetings posted by Tim. That's because we agreed. That's to streamline the process and make sure there's only one person doing it and there's no conflicts.
So will you be the backup person if he is not able to?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll have to obviously learn that. But I just figured he has the technical ability right now, and we'll get,
Now, I had emailed my meeting minutes on Monday to Katie Berry. I assume that was the correct person to send it to.
Well, that's another thing that I reached out to the town clerk about, which is, I'm going to guess why he's here tonight. I didn't really know how we disseminate, I'll call it homework. So information that we're going to do outside of a meeting we want to share. I didn't really know how to do that, whether there's a time frame that we have to have it done by, so everybody has enough time to digest it before the meeting. I wasn't comfortable with that. So today I reached out to him because I did see there was some correspondence through committee members, and I just wasn't sure. So I did talk to him briefly. I don't really know. I was hoping that maybe he could, show up tonight and give us a little bit of guidance as to how to do that, or just me, if everybody's comfortable with that, I would hope. If not, please speak up. But he's town clerk, and he's very familiar with the open meeting law, and we certainly want to, abide by all those rules and regulations. So Jim, we did talk in the last meeting about sharing some ideas that I believe, some of them were what has been done in the past in this subject. So that was agreed that we would all share that, and that has been shared throughout the committee, is my understanding. I did get an email, so I'm not sure if that's proper or not. I apologize if it isn't, but we want to be educated on how to do that in the future. So could you give us a little guidance on that, Jim?
Sure, we'll do. At its most, can you hear me now with this new microphone?
Yeah, I can hear you.
At its most basic level, the open meeting law requires that meetings of public bodies be held in public. They set rules for how you create and maintain records. And for your committee, it's important that we talk about what they consider deliberations among a quorum of the members on a topic that is currently or could be under the jurisdiction of your board. Now, when I think of deliberations, I think of lawyers or jurors meeting in a room and, discussing a matter. Under the open meeting law, deliberation is really a communication in any form. It can mean a face-to-face communication, a text, an email, any form of communication amongst members. So you have 7 voting members of the committee. So any communication among a topic that is either currently or could be under the jurisdiction of your committee, reasonably under your jurisdiction of your committee, can't be shared. You can't send an email or any communication expressing your belief or opinion about any matter to a quorum of the committee. You can send it to one who forwards to another, to another, to another. That's a serial deliberation as well. So these things have to be done in public meetings like this. What you can do is send your materials to the chair or somebody that's designated to collect these, and they can bring that together for your town meeting. So, by the way, your quorum will be 4, even if a couple of members will leave the committee, the quorum is still 4 based upon that. Emails can be sent out if they're for distribution of meeting agenda materials, scheduling, procedural materials, and so forth. But the key thing is that no opinions or beliefs of board members are among those items that are distributed. Just share a couple of things.
So that sharing of the previous bylaws, that was okay. But if we were to share an opinion that I think this bylaw from Bill Ricker was bad, that would not be okay.
In my opinion, both emails that went out were violations of the open meeting law, but I'm not the AG and I'm not the open meeting law police. The wise thing would have sent this to one person and one person only and let the chair then distribute that at the meeting. But one of those emails clearly had opinions about things you should do moving forward, and you can't get down that road.
So Jim, if we were to, like as homework, so to speak, research, say we wanted to research the surrounding town bylaws.
Yep.
And somebody were to do that, gather them all, and we wanted to share them in preparation for the next meeting. Can we do that, and how would we do that?
The suggestion would be that one person be designated as the point of collection for all of this, and they all be sent to that one person, and that one person could then send out, here are the bylaws, information that doesn't have a belief or opinion to all the members. You could send it as part of a packet for the next meeting or something along those lines. And I caution you, especially, let's say the chair was the person who'd be sending this out to the whole board or committee. Be careful that you always blind copy the other members, because you don't want somebody to inadvertently reply all. So the quick and dirty, I always tell people, just blind copy on that. By the way, just an aside here, let's say that somebody inadvertently sends an email to all the committee with, I really think that this procedure up in Wakefield is the way we should go. If somebody sends that out to all the members of the committee or to a quorum, even if nobody replies, that is still an open meeting law violation. And unfortunately, the way the open meeting law is written, there's no such thing as a felony and a misdemeanor. It's all one big violation. And when it gets publicized, and it's simple for somebody to file a violation, a complaint. It makes it appear that you're meeting in a cigar smoke-filled room and bad things are happening. So it's important to avoid a lot of these minefields. And if you have any questions, you can call me at any time. I'd be happy to keep you out of trouble on this.
Jim,
yeah.
Just a question about that. Is there a ability, if there was like something sent by accident in that way, can it be brought up during the meeting to be then considered part of open meeting and say there was this sent, it's all on the record, to kind of clear the record? Is that part of what's allowed in this case, or is that, I know it's bad behavior that supports bad behavior, but is there anything like that where if something was sent to the whole team as, say, I did this earlier, so I'm asking specifically about a situation. I sent reference material of reading about what just technical words are for discussion later. So it was all technical, it's all factual based information with no opinions attached.
Then that's not a violation.
Okay.
But
Well,
if something were to go out that was a mistake,
You stated earlier that to send it out to everybody was a violation.
you didn't listen to what I said, Peter. I said if it expresses your belief or opinion on a matter, that's what constitutes the violation.
Okay,
But
so
the wise course of action is not to send it to everybody. Give it to the chair and have the chair, one person, be the person to be the point of collection, and then to send it out to others and to blind copy the people so there can be no inadvertent reply all.
Okay, so as of last meeting, we did not have a chair or a co-chair, and we
Mhm.
agreed that documentation would be sent to everybody so they could review it in preparation for tonight's meeting.
I think it's just as long as we don't talk about any opinions. If we just talk about, basically, any opinions is considered a deliberation. So if you're just presenting something that was printed online or something that was printed out from a town, or, something that's anybody can get, it's when there's an interpretation on that material, that's where it's a deliberation that could influence the committee and decisions that were made. That's where I think you run into the problem.
So let me read a quote to you from an email from the Attorney General's office on this. Our best advice continues to be that public bodies not communicate over email at all, except for distributing meeting agendas, scheduling meetings, and distributing documents created by non-members to be discussed at meetings.
So it is okay, like, for us to send Peter or somebody, this is Wayland's noise bylaw.
Sure, and you absolutely could, in that, to that one individual, you could say, and I think it's terrific, or I think it's terrible. Because you
And that's
communicate.
not okay.
No, that's perfectly okay, because you're sending it to one person, not to a quorum.
Okay,
You
got
can
it.
certainly do that. So,
Okay.
So I
Jim,
sent the
when I
minutes
send it
out.
out to the group, it has to be just the document, no opinions, no further communication, correct?
correct, yep. And
Okay.
again, do everybody a favor and don't blind copy everybody so that somebody inadvertently doesn't reply all. But Tim, getting back to your point earlier, if something were to happen that somebody inadvertently sent something out that could potentially be considered an open meeting law violation, the wise course of action is at the next meeting to bring that up, acknowledge what was done, resolve it, and you move on. Right? That's the remedy for a lot of these things. So let me switch
With
gears real
respect
quick.
to
'Cause-
draft, Tim, I'm sorry, Jim, with respect to draft minutes,
Mhm.
so it's best to send draft minutes to the chair and then let him send them out as opposed to sending them out to the whole committee?
One person, whoever you want to designate to be the problem. It's kind of problematic because you're going to share this amongst a lot of people. Sounds like, but generally on a board or committee, you'll designate one person to be the secretary, and that person would send the draft comments out to everybody and said, if you have a comment or an edit or a change of this, send it directly to me only. And that person collects all those and you bring it forward at the next meeting. So whoever you want to be that one point of origin and collection would be perfectly okay.
So then maybe what we should do is each week, whoever is doing your collecting the draft minutes should be the one who sends out the draft minutes and blind copies the rest of us so that we get our own particular draft minutes correct.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense.
And then send it to the town clerks so that they can post it as part of our agenda.
No, you don't have to do that. That's not required whatsoever. But let's talk about posting for a second. The open meeting law requires that the clerk post the agenda submitted by the chair or whoever what's going to submit the chair at least 48 business hours before the meeting. Don't send it to us 48 hours and 15 minutes. It's not going to happen. I literally got 11 agendas sent to me this afternoon, and 11. And I had deadline of things I had to get done by 4 o'clock for related to the town meeting. So none of them are posted. I'm going to work on some tonight and some tomorrow. So get these to us as soon as you can. And the
And you
agenda has,
wanted to be the town clerk.
no, I hear you. No, we'll get it all done. But sometimes folks send things in at the last minute. And if I have a customer at the counter, they take precedence over an email at the last minute. But your agenda has to include the topics. This is a very important thing that a lot of people get confused about. Your agenda has to include the topics that the chair is could reasonably assume to be aware of 48 hours before the meeting. So let's say there are 4 topics that you want to have on the next meeting. Those have to be posted more than 48 hours in advance. You have to say where you're going to hold the meeting, is it Zoom or is it in person, so forth. And it has to be the date, the time, the location, things like that. So the public is put on notice. We have to post that on the bulletin board in the town hall. It's part of the law and up on the website as well. Within the 48 hours, if something significant comes up, the chair does have the right to modify the agenda. So let me back up. Let's say a week in advance, you put up the agenda. You can change that 100 different times if you want up until the 48 hours. Perfectly okay. It happens all the time. You can also change the date. You can change the time, any change you want up until the 48 hours. Once the 48 hours pop up, the chair does have the right to change the agenda to add something new that pops up. My recommendation from the 10 years that I spent on the advisory committee and rec commission, don't do it unless it's very significant. You're much better off putting it off to the next meeting. You give the public much better notice. If it's critical, go ahead. But again, it has to be something new that just popped up. Okay. So I would suggest that. A couple of things. Let me jump to something that's pretty straightforward. Oh, somebody asked about the minutes and stuff like that. Part of the open meeting law requires that we also preserve the documents used at the meeting. And they define that to mean 3 things: that a document is verbally identified, its contents are discussed at the meeting, and it's physically present. You all have it at the meeting. So we have a town bylaw that I brought forward years ago that makes the clerk responsible for retaining all the minutes and all these records. Just makes a lot of sense because honestly, boards just weren't keeping them. That's how it worked out. And minutes, believe it or not, and these documents are required to be kept forever. So 100 years from now, we have to have these things. That's what the state law requires. And honestly, we weren't doing it. Most towns weren't. So our town bylaw requires within 45 days of the meeting, you have to send to the clerk an agenda, the minutes of the meeting and the documents used at the meeting. And we'll take care of posting all that and making it ADA compatible and so forth. So if somebody has a public records request, it's already taken care of. You don't have to hold another meeting just to approve your minutes. That's not what we have to do. But that's pretty straightforward. So what you do is you'd actually send that to the same email address you used to post your meeting, your agenda. Just send it to meetings and we'll take care of it from there. A couple of things that pop up here. If anybody who's taking the minutes has any questions, and this stuff can be very, the minutia can kill you, please give me a call. We deal with this all the time. We'll be happy to steer you out of trouble and try to make you, we'll deal with the minutia so you guys you're volunteers and we want to, try to be respectful of your time. A couple of questions that come up a lot. Let's say that your board, let's assume that we were in the physical world. And let's say the Board of Selectmen wanted an update on the progress of your committee, okay? Your board committee. And one of you was going to go. The question becomes, do you have to post a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen? You technically don't. But the smart move is to do it anyway, just in case a quorum of your board or committee attends the meeting and one of you chooses to speak. If you were all going to sit there and not say a word, then you wouldn't have to have the meeting. But the smart move is to post it anyway. Just say joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen, one line, and you're good to go. That just keeps things pretty straightforward. Pulling notes, I'm kind of crank this down here. And that's really about it. The best advice I've ever had from a municipal law attorney said, never send an email to a quorum of the board that expresses your belief or opinion on a matter that currently or could come under your board's jurisdiction. If you remember that, you're going to stay out of trouble for 99% of the time. And again, we deal with all kinds of crazy stuff. There's no question that's off the wall. There's, somebody else has already experienced it, or we can make a quick phone call. Oh, one thing I do want to throw out here. This is actually very significant because another board got in trouble with this a couple of years ago. Raise my hand here. Let's say that somebody that doesn't like the focus of your board, okay? Here you go. Somebody posts, an anonymous poster goes on the blog, myselfbro.com, and posts something criticizing your board or committee, whatever the reason is, okay? And some of your members then choose to go on the blog and respond back to that. And they say, hey, my name is Peter Goodney, but I'm posting as a private citizen, and you set the person straight. If a quorum of your committee, if 4 of your members post on that response to somebody who's not a member of your committee, that's an open meeting law violation. Somebody in Concord get dinged for that. So it doesn't matter the forum. It could be an email, a text, or whatever. You're good to go. Finally, let me switch to public records requests. The town has issued each one of you a southborough.ma.com email address, and they ask you to use that for town business. If you receive an email, this happens to me sometimes. People still send me emails on my Gmail account, or sometimes I'll get them on my personal phone, a text or something like that. Just forward it across to your town email so they have a record of it, okay? It doesn't make a difference whether you use your phone, your personal phone, whether you use a personal email, a business email, or the town email to communicate on something under the jurisdiction of the board or committee. That's a public records request. And somebody could make a request for that. And it's very significant. So just forward that across to your town email, and then you'll have that and you'll be good to go. Finally, one last point. Some people think that the public records law allows people to request everything under the sun. Your American Express report, what you had for breakfast. I mean, that's not the case. There's common sense involved here. And the notes that you take tonight, the records that you retain, the research you're doing on all the work that you'll do as your committee moves forward, that's not a public record. Those are your own personal notes. That is not subject to disclosure to anybody, unless you share it with somebody. So my personal diary that I keep, things that I just help me do my work, that's not a public record. But if I choose to share that with somebody, at that point, it becomes a public record. So don't be concerned about the notes that you're taking and the various things and saying, Hegarty talked too long or whatever. That's perfectly okay. You're good to go on that. So don't be worried about that. And don't worry about somebody asking for some of this frivolous stuff. I've had people ask for stuff that's just absurd, and they don't get it. So, and again, at any time, if you have any questions, please reach out to me. I'll be glad to help you. And again, we try to make things as simple for people that are volunteering time to help the town. So I hope I haven't muddied the waters too much, but it's sort of like dancing on the head of a pin here, some of this stuff, but I'll be glad to help you. If any questions tonight or.
So Jim, at this point, since there was some emails that went back and forth with opinion, is it best to bring up those and just dictate what those emails said during this meeting? And then that way we're on the other side of this initial setup process?
I think that the fact that you discussed it at the meeting, you'll have this in your notes that you discussed these, and moving forward, you'll learn from it, something to that effect, whatever. But and you probably just want to include those emails because they've been discussed in this meeting. Include those of the documents with the minutes that you send in, and then you're good. Then you're good to go.
Okay.
And if somebody were to file, like the way the open meeting law complaint goes, somebody has to first file it with the board themselves to say, we think you violated the open meeting law such and such a date, and then you have 30 days to try to remedy it. All right. So if somebody, were to tomorrow come in and say you did a bad thing, then you have 30 days to resolve it. You have to address it at a public meeting, take what steps you've taken to resolve it. And then somebody have to attorney general, and they would just say, no, they've already identified it. It's not an issue. They're not going to get away.
And what is the remedy?
What is the remedy? It depends on what the violation was. Sometimes the attorney general would require people to attend training. They find people, they find organizations. But people that inadvertently make a mistake through, they're new to a committee, new to board or whatever, they recognize it, they attend the training and they move on. So it's not,
But Jim, back to Tim's point, these emails that went back and forth, I mean, can we make those part of our minutes if we approve those as such, and then just put them in the minutes, and then it's all good? Well, at least
yeah, it would make sense. Those would be considered documents used at this meeting, and they'd be emailed to meetings at southborough.ma.com with your approved minutes in those documents, and then you'd be perfectly fine.
Okay.
I couldn't see anybody giving you a hard time.
I'd like to make a motion that we do just that. We add all the email communication that was done up until this meeting between members of the committee, addressing everybody else. We make that public. We print that out and we make it part of Lee's meeting minutes. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, having had a second, we're going to go down and do a roll call. John?
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Lisa,
Aye.
Cynthia,
I,
and myself. So the meeting unanimous. So we will, Lee, you obviously have, you were on that chain. So we'll just attach those right to your meeting minutes. So that'll be, it's all public record now. It's all good.
So do I need to send them, Jim, or will somebody else send them in?
Whoever's going to send in your, when your minutes are approved for that meeting, just attach them, just send it as an attachment to it and so forth. And give it the name of a document and we'll put them up. And
So it'll be
whoever-
the
Jim,
attachment
this-
for last week's meeting or attachment for tonight's meeting?
I would say tonight's meeting, and you have to identify them by name. You have to say,
So
email,
Lisa will.
email,
Lisa will
whatever the
send them
deal's.
Sorry about
Yeah.
that.
And give me a call.
Okay.
I'd be happy to help you if I can do this. So,
Okay.
One
All right,
more.
Thanks, Jim.
Sorry, one question about, is there a statute of limitation for timing that a public request can come in? So that way
No.
we, to keep track of things and just make sure that everything's clean and clear and as much information is captured at the right moment to not forget about what it is that's being requested, if it would come in.
well, since your approved minutes will include the documents used at the meeting, that's all that anybody asked for.
Okay,
Those are the public records. And that's the reason I asked for us to be responsible for that. So if you were to go to the website now, you can look under say the Board of Selectmen, and you can see on the left-hand side the agenda, and the right-hand side, you'll see the minutes that were posted and all the documents used in the meeting or attachments to that. So it's all in one place. People can see everything was done. And if by chance, within 45 days, the Board of Committee has not replied, we actually put a notice up on the board to say, a copy of the email we send to the board to say, hey, you haven't submitted these minutes. So it's the public is aware that, somebody's not, the state doesn't have that requirement. To my knowledge, nobody else does. But it just makes sense. It's easy for everybody, and the system works fairly smoothly. I know it may not seem that to you guys because you knew this, but it works. This way you don't have to worry about what you have and where it is. We have it all in one spot in the web and everybody can look at it. So, okay, well, I'm going to jump off and I'm just going to stay as a participant in your meeting then, okay, unless you have a question.
wait, I have a question, Jim.
Sure. Mhm.
I just want to make sure, I had checked with Amy when I first got notified that I was on the the group. And she said that because we were something, I don't remember what, that we don't need to be sworn in. I just want to make sure that that's still the status.
Yes, the only people that are sworn in now are elected officials and only the members of the boards and committees who act with the authority of town. Those are what are legally considered officials. I actually researched this back to a case law in 1904, believe it or not. And it comes down to the Conservation Commission, the Zoning Board of Appeals, and the Historical Commission, because they have a demolition bylaw. Those are three boards that can act independently without the authority of the Board of Selectmen. And those people are sworn in. You still have to do the ethics, and you still have to do the acknowledgement of the old meeting law, stuff like that. So we'll still pester you for those things, but we won't pester you to get sworn in.
Okay.
Yeah, I had the same question. I did the same. I called up and said, are we supposed to get sworn? I didn't get sworn in. I did the same thing, so.
Yeah, it was tradition and it was unnecessary and it's a waste of everybody's time, to tell you the truth.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you, Jim, for your insight. And Jim's always good to reach out to. He's available almost all the time, for the most part.
Good deal. All right, well, I'm going to jump off and I'll just be somebody in your audience now, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks.
All right, the next order on the agenda is the open discussion on topics to be considered for the development of the bylaw. So my thought was putting this in is kind of wide ranging. It doesn't have to be anything, it can be things that we don't even have any intention of putting in the bylaw, but it should be just a list of things that we can just talk about. So I basically took the list that was circulated in the email, And I added a few things to it. I thought that was obviously that's a great start. So some of these might be in a little different order than what Pete outlined, but and Pete, please just make sure that I have all yours in here, because I kind of moved them around just so they like organizationally, because you had a couple different things in there. But and certainly this is a start, and then I'll go around to everybody and see if they want to add anything else to the list. And then at some point, we can open up a discussion, but maybe at some point we can open up to the public if they want to add anything. That's something we can talk about. But definition of activities to be included in such regulation. I believe that's one that Pete put down. Include limits of hours and or days of operation of noise producing equipment. That's one. Days of the week prohibiting certain activities. Time of day prohibiting certain activities. Animals, roosters, dogs, kennels, livestock. Is that something we want to look at? Recreational vehicles, ATVs, dirt bikes, etc., snowmobiles. And this list, Lisa, this list, I have it written out so I can forward it to you.
That'd be
So,
great.
you don't have to write down every single word.
Okay.
Vehicle operation, such as loud exhaust, engine brakes, Jake brakes, squealing tires, that kind of thing. This is one that maybe Pete can explain. Include a list, partial complete of equipment. Pete, do you want to explain that a little bit? What you mean by that?
Yeah, that was, well, I think you've sort of touched on it. That was listing out what types of machinery would be making noise, if those wanted to be addressed specifically or separately.
Okay.
And I can give you feedback on Jake brake. I've tried to get
Well, at this point, we're just talking about what we're at least going to entertain, and then at some point we're going to take each one of these on and talk about whether we want to pursue it or not.
Okay.
So I don't mean to cut you off, but I want to make sure we're kind of following the rule here, because we get a lot
Yep.
to cover. And to be honest, I don't know if we're going to even get to all this tonight. I think it's kind of advantageous that we have such a big agenda here, but I want to put it in anyways. Leaf blowers as a separate specific category. And then I believe this is Pete's. A leaf blower is considered separately, shall there be specific restrictions, number of blowers in a simultaneous operation, limits by hours, by season, ban on gas-powered blower devices altogether, as some municipalities have done, use as a broom to dry off a vehicle. I think I added those last two that I saw just recently. Yeah, somebody was doing their parking lot with just a leaf blower.
Yep.
And I saw somebody drying their car with a leaf blower. So the next one is, if no decibel limits, then would it be considered a discretion only, and how would that work? That's a concern submitted by Mr. Lapine. Contractor activities, which would be a paid activity versus a homeowner activity. That's one I thought we should maybe look at. So if there's, that kind of activity going on. Also, if we should look into, if we should have different ideas about zoning as far as residential or commercial. Should there be different standards? And if so, how would we deal with the buffer zones between those? How are we going to do with animals, roosters, dogs, kennels, livestock? I think I probably talked about that already.
You mentioned that.
Sorry about that.
Yep.
And so isn't recreational motor vehicles. I did some cut and pasting today to try and get the list. The next thing was noise measuring devices. That's, I believe, one of Mr. Lapine's suggestions. Include limits on reasonable, measurable decibel levels generated by equipment. Also, At what distance would any measurements be taken? Previous documents have mentioned 10, 50, 100, or 150 feet. The issues here is that people's homes are not typically situated that far apart, more like between 25 and 50 feet, having a, okay, that gets into the, discussion part of it. So basically we would strike that and we just at what distance would any measurements be taken? That would be the line. Enforcement issues, if the decibel limits are to be included, how shall they be enforced? Sound level meters, so I guess the topic would be sound level meters. So I'll underline that. How
I think
sophisticated,
that was 2 items before you had noise measuring devices too.
okay, great. So I could just cross that one out then. So that's all I had between what was sent out in the email from Mr. Lapine and my 2 cents. Does anybody else have any additions to that? I'm not saying that we're going to put them in, but when the public comes in, at some point, the public's going to come in and going to go, what did you guys consider? I want to be able to say we considered just about anything anybody could ever think of. For the most part. And say we discussed it and we decided to either put it in or not put it in, and we'll be able to articulate why we did what we did. So that's I think my goal, and believe me, I'm open to any direction you guys have. This is a group effort here, but.
I have 2 things, if I can go now.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I would like to also include on the list is exclusions. So any sort of that would cover natural disasters and maybe specific exclusions outside of natural disasters like equipment and whatnot, as something to discuss. And I would like to just put this into the discussion of where the measurements are taken is single family or multifamily dwellings.
Tim, is that 2 items? One is exclusion, the other one is noise between a multifamily home?
Yeah, I mean, like, I would say exclusions is its own category.
Okay.
And I would simply say that the multifamily, single family is just a definition, or it would fall in where the measurement is taken conversation.
Okay.
But just making sure it covers single and multifamily.
Yep. So there should be a delineation between single or multifamily.
Yeah.
Is basically what he's saying. So that's good. Anybody else have any they want to add?
Lisa has her hand up.
I'd like to consider trash collection and deliveries to homes.
Yeah,
Deliveries or pickup.
that gets into what sources of noise are to be considered, right?
Yeah, I would think so. Types of vehicles that might create
Well,
that noise.
Yeah, and that was
And when
mentioned.
They're
that was
coming into the
mentioned.
neighborhood.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly, like I said, we can put it down.
Yeah. I mean, I recently read a noise bylaw that was passed by a town in another state, and it sounds like it was written to address parties in apartment buildings.
Hmm.
You know, they talk about noise being heard in adjacent apartments. I mean, that's specifically addressed. So they're, you know, that's included in their definitions of noise sources. But that sounds like that ties into the multifamily.
Okay. So Lisa, I have trash collection and delivery. That's what I have for you. Is that one or is that?
So it's, I guess it's, I guess it's pickups and deliveries, right? So.
Okay. Anybody else have any more?
Chief
Peter-
Paulus had his hand raised for a moment, so I don't know if he wants to speak or not, but if he
Yeah,
can-
is he have the ability to, speak? Or,
he has the ability to speak, if he would like to.
He can't vote, that's all.
yeah, can he test that out?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes,
Okay. Last time I had a box with my name on it that I could kind of follow the action. I don't see that tonight. But as long as I know that I'm in the meeting, I have been right from the beginning. We tried to, when I did this with Sam Stivers back, I'm looking at my draft bylaw and 3/6 of 17. We had actually come up with one and put a date on it. But I do recall, like I said last week, we had looked at maybe 20 different samples, and we tried to come up with every scenario that you're talking about tonight. So maybe if we could somehow include this for everybody to review for next week. There's, like we're discussing, there's all kinds of different scenarios. And, you're talking about animal noise, snow
was-
blowers, all kinds of different ones. But I do recall, and I'm reviewing it right now, I have it in my hand. We tried to cover all avenues. So it might help to look at this document before we make an all-inclusive list.
that was distributed. That document's been distributed.
Chief, Peter, was that part of your, that was part of your thing for the most part, right?
That was a separate, that document and 2 other versions were distributed to everybody in this committee last week.
Mhm.
I
With
either
notation.
missed it or I didn't get it.
If you're on the mailing list, you should have received it. I sent it to the distribution.
It doesn't matter. It's going to be added to this week's minutes.
Fine,
Right.
but
We'll have it.
everybody should already have it, is my point.
Yep,
Well,
thank you.
Yeah, I saw it.
Those
only
were
have-
sent. Those were sent so people could read them to get background information. That's under our item to review existing or previous versions. Let's see, where is it?
Okay, I only saw one. It says Southborough noise bylaw, but it doesn't say when it is or, but
Okay,
it mentions a lot of things that Chief just talked about, so.
The one I have has a date on it on the top, and it
Right.
says draft
Yep.
across it.
upper right-hand corner, it lists the date in 2017.
Correct.
I'll have to look for that again. I did not see that.
One of the mails has 3 attachments to it, and that's included.
Okay.
Pete, you seem to be well versed in that document. Is there anything that we haven't listed that's in that document? I mean, we can still add to this list in the future. It's not like it's, once we didn't talk about it today, we're never going to talk about it.
Right.
If we
Right.
decide in the future we want to add to it, we can add to it. But I
Peter,
just figured we wanted to
there's
get
alarms.
something working,
There is stuff in that document that we didn't go through, such as alarms in buildings and vehicles being activated and so forth. So
Right.
there are things in there that we have not discussed yet.
It would be really helpful if people would review all those documents before some meetings, so they have exposure to what's out there, or for the town of Southborough, what's been previously proposed and not yet acted upon. And then I sent a link to the state website that gives you access to all the town websites and their bylaws, so that people could look at those if they were curious about the ones that I researched a couple years ago in order to, come to the decision to select the one that I based my proposal mostly on. I also sent today, I think it was, or maybe yesterday. No, I think it was today. There are already 2 existing state laws governing noise. Right? One by,
That,
Environmental protection,
once
Envi-
again,
environmental
Department of Environmental Protection.
we
Right,
want to
that's
stick to
one.
the agenda, Pete. And we just want to right now, at the moment, just go through what we're gonna talk about as far as items that we're going to consider. So
Okay.
that is great information, and it's something we should all look at. However, right now at the moment, we're just going to go through items that we're going to consider, or at some point. John, can I put down alarms and vehicle alarms that you brought that up?
Well, I brought it up because the 2017 document lists all kinds of things we haven't talked about. So I think it talks about emergency vehicle noise and so forth. So I just think there's stuff in there that we just should, for completeness, include in the complete list.
right, but I was just excluded from referencing those documents.
Not referencing, this
no.
is about talking about.
Pete, we're asking for things that we want to consider in the bylaw. I
Yeah.
don't care where you get them from.
Right.
It doesn't matter
But-
where you get them from.
But by the same
I'm looking at the
token,
list that was
Town,
sent
I don't
today,
care.
and it
Just
looks
tell
like
us what
we've
they're gonna be,
covered all
we're gonna
the
write 'em
items
down, and
for
we're gonna get on
questions.
it.
Can
It's
can
not
I
like an author of it.
can I have a point of order for this?
Sure.
We appointed a chair earlier in the meeting. There's a lot of people in this meeting, and we're all trying to discuss valid points. And Zoom is not always the best way with everybody talking. There's a raise hand function. I don't know if it'd be useful if we could possibly use that and then just have called upon status, just to try to keep it a little bit cleaner.
Sure. Yep. Does anybody else have any more things they want to add to the list to be considered? All the- John, since you were just talking last, why don't we just
Sorry.
continue with what you want?
There are other laws at the state and the town that we need to consider what not to overreach. So from a police standpoint, I mean, if there's a vehicle that's making a lot of noise, that's got to be already part of some statutes. So I want us to keep a simple. So I just want to make sure that we're covering, or we know what other statutes, both local, state, and federal, so that we don't adhere to them and not overreach.
I would agree with you, and that may be our discussion when we get to that particular item.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, somebody talked about, I don't know, Jake breaks, or
Right.
we want to be able to say we talked about it. And if we're just gathering a list of what things, like you say, we may say, oh, there's a law against that. Okay, and we all agree to it. We did talk about it. We rehashed it. That's all we want to be able to say.
Great.
I would say you're correct on what you're saying is truthful. So is there anything else that you have that you might want us to consider?
The emergency, I'm just looking at the categories.
And step up, if you see something later, let us know. We'll just add it.
Yeah, I'm just thinking emergency situations where a neighbor's using, a power generator to power their house,
Okay.
that's pretty loud.
Mhm.
But
Would that be considered an exception?
I'd hope so.
Yeah. I see that. I'm looking at the draft from 2017, and that's
covered.
under actually the first page is a list of exceptions, emergency situations. There's a lot covered there, just so, if you haven't looked at it. But I think-
I've read it. Thank you.
Okay.
then it doesn't.
I see some little hand signals. I'll start with you, Cindy.
Well, I was just going to suggest that rather than I believe the 2017 version, which I did not look at, it is the one the chief said that was a starting point where it covered a lot of the things that he had heard of. And rather than coming up with a new list and debating all these other lists, perhaps if other people feel that the 2017 list or proposed, maybe we could use that as a starting point, and then as we go through it, add other items that aren't on it. Ooh, lots of reaction.
I would think that anything that's in there, we could just add to this list and
Agree.
we want to be as wide encompassing of as many ideas as people can dream up. I mean, we're going to sit in front of an open meeting, 3 open meetings. We want to be able to say we've talked about everything. We don't want to
Okay,
be
but it
surprised.
just seems to me that we're starting another list when there's essentially already a list, but
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, I mean, we are.
okay.
Well, then we're,
Go
How
ahead.
do we put our hands down? Oh, there we go.
Go ahead. Are you,
All right.
Go ahead, Cindy. I
All
didn't
right,
mean to
yeah.
cut you off.
No, I'm good.
Okay. Lisa? I see you got the little hand signal.
Do we have motor vehicles and motorcycles, mufflers, etc. on the list?
I
Yes.
put on the list I read earlier, the printed out list, it does say vehicle operation, loud exhaust, engine brakes.
Perfect. Thank you.
And I also have recreational vehicles, ATVs, dirt bikes, etc. I don't know if that covers what you're talking about.
Sure. Yep. That's great. Thank you.
Lee,
Yeah, so I did read the materials earlier today, and I think we've covered pretty much. We've added everything on our list from those things, including the things that I think it was Peter put out earlier in terms of things to be considered. And I think we've got most of those. The way I look at this list is that when we get to doing our public hearing and we put an agenda up for it, that we would probably end up putting this list up and then asking people to go. We would just end up going down whatever our list, whether it's a list of exclusions or a list of inclusions of things that we were looking for, to get public opinion on them one item at a time. And so I look at this list that we're creating tonight as the agenda for our public hearing, because I don't think we can actually realistically discuss it until we at least have our first hearing. So that's the way I look at it.
yeah, I think that's a great point, Lee, and that was one that I was a little curious on how we're gonna actually go about that, and I didn't know if maybe we should have at some point certain discussions on some of these. Some are going to be, we could see they definitely have to be in there. Some was like, well, not likely because, like somebody mentioned, they're addressed in other means. So, I don't know if we want to have some of those preliminary discussions first, or if we just want to wait and listen to the public. That's certainly not, to be honest with you, I don't know which way we should go on that. That's something we're going to have to obviously agree on collectively, but I certainly agree with you that is something that we're going to have to think about and talk about.
I mean, my own personal opinion is for the first town meeting that we have, we should not really exclude any idea that we've had for discussion, because we may find ourselves, too narrowly focused and discover that we're out of sync with the rest of the community. Or we may find that we're totally in sync, in which case our job will become much easier to do.
Well, I don't think it would hurt to talk about the list, just at least briefly.
Yep.
You know, we do have some, I mean, I certainly know about some, you know, laws and so forth and that, you know, motor vehicles and other things that, you know, maybe that could easily be addressed, but.
So maybe part of the agenda for our next meeting would be to actually submit this list to all of us, however we can do that appropriately, so that we'll know what to discuss, and that on the agenda for the next meeting will be inclusion or exclusion of each item as part of the agenda for the public hearing.
This list is part of our
Informal suggestion.
Yep, this list is going to be part of our meeting minutes. So we'll all have that. Everybody in the world that wants it can have it. Once it's approved at the next meeting, we'll get the minutes, we'll approve them, and so it'll be public record. So anybody could research, hey, what did you guys look at? And we looked at, you know, there are certain things that some people are going to think are ridiculous, and some things that people are going to think, oh, that's really good. Who are we to judge? We just want to make sure we've got it all covered. And I don't see any more hands. Peter, did you look at this extensively? Are we missing anything? Oh, I see a hand from Ken Paulus.
Peter, did we include anything on animal noise? That is something that comes up on our radar, especially during the pandemic when people were working at home. It seemed to magnify a little bit.
I have, in my list, I have animals, roosters, dogs, kennels, livestock.
Okay.
Lisa.
Do we know if, does someone else take care of animal noise? Do we have like a dog warden or anything like that?
We can look into that when it's discussion time for each item.
There's an animal control
Animal
person.
control, there we go.
And I'm not sure if we have a leash law or not. They would enforce that sort of thing. They deal with animals that are dead in the road and that sort of thing, or, you know, people reporting possible cases of rabies and that kind of thing. But other than that, I don't think they get into like how much aggravation an animal causes a neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
John, do you have, I see you got the hand signal.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just looking at Chief Paulus's document. One thing we haven't really talked about, it could be under parties, but there's a whole section on yelling, shouting, hooting, whistling, singing. And so that's a whole section that I didn't see kind of covered in the list that you're creating.
Hey, John, I'm adding that to the list. Thank you. Excuse me. Chief, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, back to animal control. We do have an ACO. We contract out to a private company, but they work under the watch of the police department. So in order to have them enforce any type of punitive action, we'd have to have something on the books.
Okay, good to know. Peter, I see you have your hand up.
Yes. The more topics we try to address in this, the tougher it's going to be to get anything done. And I'm speaking that from a point of experience. If you've reviewed the version of the noise bylaw that made it to the town meeting in spring of 2021, a major criticism of it was that it was too complex, too complicated. So that's why I made the list up that I sent out that said things that we might want to consider. And we might even want to just go for something really simple and not address specifics, just say hours and days and not even, you know, and even abandon if we choose to, decibel levels. So,
Peter, I definitely understand what you're saying. And that's why I have on the agenda 2 steps from now, review of proposed previous citizens petition. So that's
Yeah.
exactly what I wanted to talk about.
but people are talking about when this gets exposed to public hearing. If all those things are on public hearing, you're gonna have a 12-hour public hearing. And everybody's gonna say, well, what do you mean? I can't do this? Or what do you mean I'm not gonna be able to do that? Because
We didn't agree that we would put all these in a bylaw. We just said we're going to consider them.
okay,
We may end up with exactly what you just said. But we have to look at everything, because then somebody's going to say you did, somebody's going to come up and say you didn't.
you don't know that. We don't know
Well,
that.
We want to take that argument away. We may end up exactly like what you just said, with something short, or we're not there yet. We have to get there. At least that's my thought. You know, we may at one meeting go, you know, half of these are ridiculous. We're not going to deal with them. The boom, boom, boom. We may shorten it, like you said, but this is something we have to do collectively. We have to talk about it. We have to research it. This is what otherwise the selectmen could just do this without us. You know, that we're doing the work for them.
No. If the select board wanted a noise bylaw, this town would have had a noise bylaw at least a decade ago.
Wow.
Okay, they've had numerous opportunities it's been brought up many times before. Sam and Ken Paulus's version of 2017 was the next to the most recent. There were other versions before that.
I agree. And why didn't they get passed? And maybe it's because they didn't have a long enough list to start from.
No, because
But
because the select,
all here, we're going to try and give it a whirl. I don't want to get far off the agenda, because it's a very big agenda.
okay,
and-
but you want to ask questions, but you don't want me to provide an answer. I can give you answers. Why weren't those laws passed before? Because the Board of Selectmen would not include them in the town warrant. So the town didn't even get to hear about them, to vote up or down on them. Okay, and in fact, I had to fight and go citizens petition to get my version on the town warrant, because the Board of Selectmen wouldn't put it on there. Okay, their statement was the town needs a noise bylaw, just not this one. But they have no interest in developing one.
Well, that's why we're here, isn't it?
We're here because they finally got enough feedback from the townspeople that enough people are concerned about noise in this town that they're starting to take it seriously, and they formed a committee. They asked for volunteers for the committee.
And we're here to do just that. So.
Right. The charge for this committee, still, whatever we come up with, they can edit, they can change to their liking. Those are items in the charge. Please be aware of those facts. So we can do all this work. We can come up with the most finely tailored noise bylaw, and they can say, you know what? We don't like this version either. That's a possibility.
Okay. That's why we're going to make it the best we can.
Yep.
So they don't do that. And if we take in.
And then we attend town meeting.
You know, all we can do is the best we can try. You know, we're a good group of people. We come from a wide variety of backgrounds. We're just going to put our heads together, see what we come up with, and, you know, see where we can go. The next thing on the agenda is research and review of existing bylaws in the Commonwealth.
Peter, Heather had her hand up. I think it might be good.
Oh,
just-
hi, it's Heather. Yeah, just a quick question. Sorry, I'm late, and sorry I couldn't look at the material. We were vaccinating this afternoon. Just a question for you guys. I've looked at this before. And the noise complaints from Route 90 Mass Turnpike, that wouldn't be related to this, because I thought there was like a state that the town as a town would complain if about turnpike noise.
That's a good point. So
Vehicles or construction?
Well, both. I guess, well, right now it's construction, but right. But I thought there was a program from like Mass DOT for the construction and or in general for turnpike noise.
I'm gonna put that down, as an item. I mean, I live
All right.
3 houses away from the bridge they just replaced, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay,
And
gotcha.
I didn't think of it, but we'll put that down.
Heather, did you say Route 9 too?
No, I said Route 90. I'm
Okay.
sorry. Route 9 probably has noise as well. But no, I was asking on 90, but yeah, I imagine Route 9 as well, but
And 495.
495.
There are laws on the books for both of those.
Yeah.
I've tried to get enforcement on for both of those, for all of those as well, and have been shut down multiple times.
Through the state or through the town?
Through the town, I've had to go to the state. There's a truck enforcement division. I've made multiple calls to them to try to get the truck noise on Route 9 and Route 495 under control. They're way understaffed, and it's so many trucks they can barely make a dent. I was awakened last night at 3:15 in the morning by, I don't know what. I guess it was a truck, because I could hear it for another 10 minutes after. Out of a sound sleep, just, it sounded like something went by my house, but it wasn't next to my house. It was off in the distance.
Are we, Pete, you still have your hand signal up.
Okay, I'll take it down.
Are we done discussing number 5, open discussion on topics to be considered for the development of bylaw? Like, do we have for the most part, do we have everything that we could possibly even take into consideration? Heather, excuse me, I didn't realize that when you popped in, so.
Yeah, I just popped in, I don't know, 15 minutes ago, but I'm in the car.
Okay.
I just pulled over for a minute, but,
We're
and
just trying to, I don't know if you heard, but we're just trying to get a list together of possible things
right,
to consider.
right. Was,
Um,
industry, like the distribution center, was industry in there, I imagine?
Oh, yes, it fit under the zoning if there was a zoning of residential versus commercial.
Yeah.
Gotcha, like the Kens. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, so
I think your list is pretty comprehensive at this point, so we can always add to it later, but I think we're safe to move forward on our agenda.
okay, I would agree. We got a pretty good sized list here. I think we have touched about just about anything that we could have imagined. The next thing on the list here is research and review of existing bylaws in the Commonwealth. I put that in. I didn't know how far we were going to get. I know Peter put down some links to some different some bylaws throughout the state that have noise bylaws. I did look at, I'm familiar with obviously from Westboro. Westboro took a little bit different approach. Did everybody get a chance to look at some of those bylaws that Pete outlined?
Mm-mm.
Okay. I think considering that it's, almost 9:30 and we do have a couple more things to go, that is a pretty big topic. I think that would take a lot of horsepower to review. I would like to just table that for the next meeting, if that's okay with you folks.
If it's, I think that list had a number of things on there. I would just like to suggest something to look at and just leave it at a suggestion of something to look at from this point.
Yeah,
If that's okay.
Tim, that's perfect. I think if we make that part of our homework, that we're going to look at Peter's links to some of those bylaws in preparation of the next meeting to be able to discuss those. So I will table that. I think it's number 5. I'm going to table number 6 for the next meeting so we can prepare a little bit more. How's
Okay.
that?
So yeah, am I okay to add to that list that was not in what Peter mentioned, is it okay if I just give one more to look at for us to talk about
If
later?
you want to do it right now, we can put it in the meeting minutes and certainly,
Just look at the town of Bellingham's noise ordinance. It's quite short and it's just a good reference of something shorter to take a look at.
I did, I worked in Westboro for 32 years. We dealt with these noise complaints, and there is a bylaw in Westboro that most of the noise complaints that it's been my experience dealt with construction activity, and they have a bylaw on construction activity. And I'll read it to you. It's on the town website if you want to look it up. But it said, and it's only a paragraph. In residential areas or in areas adjacent to residential areas of town, construction operations shall only be allowed 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, excluding state and national holidays, between the hours of 8 and 6 p.m., with the exception that on-site only construction activities may begin at 7 a.m., 8 a.m. on Saturday. No starting or idling of equipment shall be allowed prior to 7 a.m. Deliveries to the site shall not be allowed prior to 7 a.m. There shall be no construction activities on Sunday. Notwithstanding the foregoing, different hours of construction operations may be granted by the Board of Selectmen for municipal projects or for other projects by the appropriate permit granting authority. So it's just a one paragraph thing that it's been my experience dealt with, not obviously not all noise complaints, but with the increase in development, especially in that town.
So Peter, just so we don't go down this path, because I wasn't trying to do it with mine.
Yeah.
So can we just keep it to what to look at, but not read it, not discuss it
Sure.
right now?
I just had it in my hand and I figured I'd just share with you.
Okay, so I had Bellingham, you said Westboro. If there's any other specific ones to look at, let's just keep it to the town name so we don't spend the time tonight on it.
Yep. I mean, Peter had a bunch of links. I'm sure that would take quite a while to go through.
Right, those will just, if you read those, they just give you a more rounded picture of what other towns have done in their approaches to noise bylaws.
Yep. Okay. All right, so that's that one.
I have my hand up for a second.
Oh, sorry about that. Go ahead, Lee.
Yeah. So in essence, sort of after reading, hearing you read that one, for topics to be considered, probably ought to be conditions for waivers. In other words, we ought to have a way. So for example, say somebody wanted to do inside the house construction that didn't make any significant noise, whether or not they could do those kinds of things. But whatever it is, we probably ought to look at, conditions for waivers.
Okay, I add that to the list. Lisa, I see your hand.
I'm asking that when you go through those bylaws, maybe if you could keep track of if the bylaw has decibels and if they use some type of measurement for decibels or for sound. I know that when we looked at this for the citizens petition, it came up that the attorney general looked favorably upon timeframes and sound level measurement. So it might be good to keep track of how many of these towns do have some type of decibel measurement included in the bylaw.
I was thinking also, if there are towns, I think this was brought up somewhere, but I don't know what the surrounding towns are, but let's say you can start leaf blowing at 9 o'clock in Marlboro, but 8 o'clock here, everybody's going to rush here to do it. We want to make sure we're in sync with our surrounding towns if we decide to go down that. So not all the landscapers are coming here at 8 o'clock because they can't start in Marlboro till 9. Like that. We don't want to be attracting noise.
Right. I mean, that's the issue with having no bylaw.
Pardon me?
That's the issue of having no bylaw right now.
Right. We could, yeah, right. So, exactly. So the next one we have is one Pete that Pete brought up earlier. Review of the proposed previous citizens petition. And by this, I mean, you know, let's talk about it. And like Pete mentioned earlier, his thoughts and maybe all our thoughts on why it didn't pass, I think would be a very important,
No, I was just gonna ask if we could keep it, we can all read that bylaw or that proposed bylaw. So I don't know if it's worth going through it line by line in terms of review. I think it's mostly beneficial we focus our conversation on why we think it didn't pass. And then anything specific about the learnings from that, because we can all review it on our own time.
Yep. Is everybody comfortable with that? I mean, we should all be pretty much familiar
Yes.
with
Yes.
that. Pete, you spoke earlier on why you had some reservations about, or at least your thoughts about why it didn't pass. You want to talk about that maybe again?
Sure. Yeah, I had some thoughts on that today, in fact. As I mentioned earlier, one criticism that I heard was that it was too complicated. Now, it is a bit complex, yet it's based 95+% on an existing bylaw that's been around for 10 years. So, you know, the town of Billerica has had that as their noise bylaw for over a decade. My thoughts today on it were that it was a hostile environment. And by that, I mean, neither the Board of Selectmen nor the advisory committee would back it. So it's my belief a large number of people who attend town meeting come to that meeting wholly unprepared, and they look at the warrant and they see, has the Board of Selectmen approved it? Has the advisory committee approved it? And those two approvals make up their mind whether they should vote for or against a given article. It's unfortunate, but I believe that's probably a fact, that people don't prepare for the town meeting. So if those two organizations aren't behind an article, it's not going to pass.
Pete, did they obviously reviewed whether they were going to support that article or not at some point? Were you privy to what that review was and what their concerns were?
I got called to a meeting that they held and they asked me a bunch of questions about it. They voted on it, but not when I was present.
Okay.
So some of the members voted for it, but not enough to carry it.
Yeah, I'm just wondering why. Usually they tell you why, and that might be of some help.
I think their feedback was it was too complex, but it was no more complex. In fact, in some ways, it was simpler than the one from 2017.
Okay.
So it's like the quote that I heard at the meeting by one of the select people was, "We need a noise bylaw, but not this one." But they, like I said before, they don't want to design one themselves. I think in general, they don't really want one, but it's politically expedient to say, we want one to address those people in town who have concerns over the noise levels.
Yeah.
So it's tricky because they don't want to design one, but they want to be able to accept or refuse one that somebody else designed. So
Yeah.
you know,
I guess
that's our challenge.
It's a tough one.
Yeah.
And they want to be able to say, well, the committee came up with it. So.
Right. And maybe, you know, well, yeah, we still need one, but not that one either.
I mean, ultimately, yeah, we do want something, we want to be able to put together something that we can all agree and be proud of, that we can stand up at town meeting and say, we feel, you know, we're proud to put this forward. And
well, it's something that has to pass. You know, it's
Right.
like somebody running for elected office. They might be a complete jerk, but if enough people like them, they'll get the vote and they'll get elected. And then the party that back that person is happy.
Yeah.
You know, it might not be It might not be what anybody, the person might not be what anybody wants, but enough people wanted them that they got elected.
If I can sum up that thought, it's that you don't think that there's enough support from elected officials to help carry that petition forward. Do you think that was one big Achilles heel of that last
Right.
proposed one? Okay.
Yeah, I think the townspeople should be able to make up their own minds. You know, they should decide for themselves, not rely on somebody else's recommendation. But that's the way it's structured today. So
I mean, let's just talk about it. I was at that town meeting, and you described my actions perfectly. I did not read that before I got there. I don't generally base my voting on, what the different committees say. I usually try and read it there and kind of go over it. And I do recall it was, like you had mentioned, it was a little bit complicated, and it was, I remember, a little bit restrictive. It was also my thought that, it would be somewhat difficult for any police officer to understand that's such a large document, in such a complicated document. It reminded me of the junior operator law, that when the legislature put it in, everybody added so much stuff to it. I don't know 10 cops that can tell you who can drive the junior operator. I mean, they put in so many restrictions and relatives and, ages and periods of time. And there's just so many things there that it's almost ineffective. So when I did read that, and I was a little concerned with some of the restricted activities, being a homeowner, doing a lot of my own things, I was like, well, can I do that? Or can I not do that? And, in being kind of not very well versed, like you just had said about that, that I didn't vote for. I was there and I didn't vote for it because of that. So I can speak from the way I viewed it. And it was a lot like what you just said. So I'm interested in seeing what everybody else thinks. Maybe that'll give us somewhat of a direction on where to go with the whole thing. So I see 3 hands at the top of my screen. I'll start with you, Tim.
Yeah, I was at that meeting as well. And I was going to say that I think the biggest thing for why I wasn't for what was brought forward is the complexity of what was there. And that's why I'm here today. So I don't want to overly focus on that. I want to focus on the high level reason for why I think it didn't pass. And what I think it didn't pass for is there's a lot of content. We really need to focus on the homeowner and the contractor and just make sure the two of those things are well balanced, and make sure that it's understood and easily enforceable with some kind of policy that is repeatable. So whether that's objective or subjective, it needs to be repeatable, that it can be carried forward for enforcement. So those are the couple things I think we should try to take away from how do we make it pass, and why did it get caught up before?
Yeah, those are great points. Seem like there's some commonality between some of the opinions so far. How about you, John?
I'll be on the other side. So I did read the bylaw. My wife showed it to me. I then took out my, let's say, my lawn equipment, and I took out my engineering, noise measurement equipment, and I measured it, and it violated this law, and that's why I was against it. So it's very explicit. Between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m., blah, 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 no more than 7 decibels at a certain distance. My equipment, which was commercial grade equipment that I cut my lawn with, violated this law. And that's why I rejected it. So let's keep it simple. Let's keep it the difference between homeowners doing their stuff and, contractors and constructions. I think if we keep it simple, as Tim said, it'll pass. So I came prepared. That's why I went up and, I asked the questions because I was prepared. I knew the answer.
Okay. That's great. Lisa, you have your hand up?
Yep. So I just wanted to mention, I think, and Peter, I think when it came to the boards, I think one of the things that came up was the enforcement of this and, using those sound meters to go out to a complaint and how the police were going to handle that. And if the equipment was, I guess it would be the repeatable, using it on a regular basis, or, I think that was a difficulty that the board saw. And I think we also got some pushback as to who would be enforcing it. And that was because I think it kind of went back and forth between the police as well as the building department. And I was actually a little concerned about the building department being able to do this, because I honestly think, my opinion is that it's the police that need to do this, because no one's going to be at the building department at 5:20 in the morning when a delivery is made on my road, and it's waking me up at that time because it's backing down the street and it's got that backup beep that has woken me from my sleep, thinking it's the alarm, and I can't turn it off, right? So I think, with that, I mean, Chief Paulus needs to maybe chime in as to, what his expectations are, what would work for the force in enforcing this.
So if I can do a point of order on that comment, which is very valid, enforcement is the thing to take away from that. So the enforcement piece for why we think it didn't pass and didn't get the board support or get the elected official support. Okay.
Yes.
Cindy?
Yeah, the folks that I talked to, and my own feelings were that proposal was just way too complicated, way too restrictive. I mean, according to that, you couldn't operate your vacuum cleaner within those decibel levels. And that, seriously. John mentioned that none of his equipment met the criteria.
Including the vacuum cleaner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you just can't, people have to have lives, and you can't, whatever we come up with is the measurement. It's got to be something that allows people to do the things they need to do, whether it's commercial or residential, within reasonable hours. And the whole enforcement, I mean, there was no way that thing could have been enforced by either the building inspector, the police, I mean, the bandwidth just wasn't there on any level. So that's why I felt it couldn't be supported. I absolutely I work for landscaper. I was upfront about that when I applied for this group. But both my boss and I do believe that there needs to be a noise bylaw. Yeah, absolutely. So there's, there does have to be something in place, but things have to be able to get done too. So I think as we go through the item by item list, we're going to have some really good discussion about, why something should or shouldn't be included, and with an eye toward what chances does this have of sinking the ship or letting the ship float. So.
Yep. Seems like we have some common denominators, complexity being one of them, and enforcement being another. Peter, do you want to be called Peter?
Peter?
Okay, Peter, your hands up.
Okay, I wanted to make a comment about the complexity. If you notice in the warrant, the article that preceded the noise bylaw was a lighting proposal.
Mhm.
That was much more complicated than the noise bylaw. It was considerably longer and much, much more involved, yet nobody made mention of its complexity. And I'm not talking in this meeting, I'm talking about at all. In the town meeting or any conversations I heard, there was no mention of its level of complexity. Another thing I wanted to touch on was the enforcement piece. My understanding was it was never considered beyond the public safety. And Chief Paulus had concerns all along about using sound level meters. As a result of, I think he was in an environment where they did use them and there were some issues. And he drew parallels with radar guns and speeding motorists. And when those cases get to court, people raise questions about when was the last time the meter was calibrated, when was the officer last trained on it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So he was concerned about that. Now when we had the interviews for volunteers for this committee, one of the people in the first round has a background in sound engineering, and he brought a little sound level meter. It looked like a little microphone with him to that meeting, and he noted that device only cost $15. And he said you could get a professional grade one for about $50, 50. So the pricing on that equipment and its capabilities has drastically come down in the last few years. So that should help alleviate, if it ends up having if there's some bylaw developed that uses decibel levels, that should make enforcement simpler.
That's why I'm glad that's on our list of considerations when we get to it. I think that's going to be a sizable topic to discuss when we go down our list, when we end up doing that.
Yeah, enforcement's a big component.
Yeah. Is that it, Peter?
That's it.
Tim, your hand?
The one thing I would add to what Peter just said about the complexity comment, the lighting is not so much of a transient process. Sound is very much a transient thing that's ever changing. A light is something that's kind of installed and fixed. So it's something that you can always kind of find an annoyance on a regular basis, especially a luminaire at night. So I would just simply point out that I don't know if that adds to the level of complexity one way or another. I know I definitely think about it one way or another, but I would point that as one of the complexities that we do have to think about for why sound is different than lighting, and how the town would have approached it at large during the last meeting.
Okay. Is everybody satisfied with the review of the previous citizens petition?
Mhm.
Everybody feels as though they had their enough to say about it. Go ahead, Lisa.
I just want to comment on how it's formatted. Although it seems to be complex, I think the way that it's sectioned out and addressing certain sources, I think it's easier to read as compared to the 2017 draft, which is just line after line after line after line. And if you have a chance to look at that, just keep that in mind when you read it.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the scheduling of future meetings. I did, in my talk Friday to the town clerk, I did ask him about what's the status on in-person meetings. It's been my experience, part of being on a committee is to kind of get to know each other a little bit and, see each other in person. And he did say that that is allowed as long as there's a ability for the public to participate virtually, which my understanding, as long as we have the internet and, a computer, I guess we could do that. That's of course entirely if the committee wants to do that. I know the training room at the police department is sizable enough where we could, if we had to stay 6 feet away from each other, we could do that. I just figured I would throw that out there. Some of the public may be more inclined to participate if they can just walk in and talk rather than, deal with the computer. Some people aren't that computer literate or handy with the computer. So I would just throw that out there to see if it's something you guys even want to entertain. I don't feel one way or the other, but I think it's an option. Go ahead, Tim.
Two things. Jim mentioned in the chat that a meeting in person must be approved by the town administrator. So there's a thing we have to do there if we would decide to do something in person. And number two, which I don't know, Jim, I'm sure knows the answer, and Sam Stivers is in the audience, and he'll tell us if not. The select board had voted recently not to do in-person meetings. I don't know if that policy is still in effect or not. So I don't know if that would affect us on our next couple meetings at least. But I believe there was a restriction for a while there.
He when I first inquired, he did give me that answer that you just gave almost verbatim, but he did call me later and said what I just said. Okay. So there seems to be, we may decide to not even pursue it anyway. So it could be a moot point, but I just figured we'd throw it out there. And if it's something we think we should try to pursue, if the selectmen say no, or for some reason we can't do it, we can't do it. But, I always look forward to, I'm in this to meet people in town too, I'm not a big Zoomer guy, but that's just me, so I just wanted to kind of throw that out there.
So I would like to, I'd like to take a vote on this and just let us have a clear vote. But before we would do that, there's two more chats I'll just read. So from Jim Hegarty, they've allowed very few in-person meetings based on small attendance probability, i.e. Board of Assessors. Sam suggests, or said that I suggest you talk with Mark Purple about this. They denied the Council on Aging's request to meet in person. That came from Jim, the very last comment. So if we would like to take a vote on this, I would support that. So I'd like to make a motion, we take a vote on this.
Okay, so I'll second that. I think in the vote, we should consider, we have this public meeting that's going to take place. We're going to do 3 of them. So I think we should talk about that as well. Should that be open to the public as far as in person, or should that be just strictly virtual? So not only our meetings and the open meeting, in the public meeting.
Are we including that in the vote, or are we talking about that right now before we vote?
I think we should just do it together and say, do we have the authority to hold a public meeting in person?
So it says here, I think we get
open meeting portion of our charge.
I think we have an answer to this in the chat. So I'm just going to say this, and then we can move forward from there. From Jim Hegarty, Mark Purple is the person who makes the decision. So I don't think that we have the power to make the decision. I think we have the power to make the request.
Right.
So
right. Of course. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So how about we make the motion to see Mr. Purple and get his permission to have in-person meeting if we so choose.
A second.
Okay. Lee, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, a real hand.
Yeah.
Had a virtual. Yeah, My question is, are we talking about a virtual meeting for our next meeting, the one scheduled for next week? Or are we talking about just in general so that, perhaps we can have, once we've say gathered information, have a meeting where we're all in the same room because it is in fact more efficient. So I don't know, what was Tim thinking?
What do you guys think?
I would say let's break this out into two things. We clearly have to get a approval for this. So I'd like to make a motion that we vote on if we're willing to be in person. If the opportunity would arise. And then we could take a vote on that. And then we could also take separately a vote on should we have these other meetings in person if the opportunity would arise.
Okay.
I think that there's two different things because I don't know if there's people's comfort level to be in person. And then if there's a desire from our committee to try to do the public meetings in person.
I agree it should be broken out twice, but go ahead, Peter. I see you got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. I wanted to mention I think the Board of Selectmen is still meeting only virtually. And they probably have good reason for that. If you've noticed in the My Southborough blog, the COVID cases are spiking in Southborough. So for whatever reason, I don't know if it's because of Delta or there's a new variant or whatever. Even if we were to have a meeting face-to-face, I think we should exclude the public from participating to minimize exposure of, better to have just 7 people than 17 or 27.
Well, yeah, they would still have the ability virtually to review it. We can't do the meeting in basically in private, but
right.
maybe
Yeah, I mean they can participate now virtually, right? Anybody can dial in. And
that always has to be part of the
Yep.
process.
Yep.
Go ahead, Lee.
So I would support the motion that we take a vote as to whether we're willing to have at least one or more future meetings in person if we're given permission. Beyond that, I'm opposed to picking a particular meeting because we don't even know if we'll ever get approval. But I'm hoping that, personally, I'm hoping that maybe by January or early February, before we have to do our report, that we can actually have an in-person meeting.
Lee, would you like to remake that motion?
So if the committee would allow, then I would move that we vote and make the motion that we ask the town for permission to have a future meeting in person.
I second that.
Okay.
Okay, all those, we're gonna have a vote. I guess I gotta do roll call.
Roll call.
John,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Peter,
nay,
Lisa,
Aye.
Cynthia,
Aye.
and I'm gonna vote aye as well.
So
So-
quick clarification. So that was, we asked the town for permission to have an in-person meeting.
In the
Correct.
future.
In the
future. And considering our next meeting is next Thursday?
Yep.
Yeah.
So there's
It's not going to be next Thursday.
it's not gonna be next Thursday because there's time frames. We have to, post it virtually, obviously, in location. We have to advertise the location. We're not gonna get an answer by then, in time to do it.
Yeah.
So it's definitely not gonna be the next one, but it could, whatever we decide.
The separate, just to continue with this, I'd like to make a motion that we ask permission to have one or more public meetings for comment in person in the future.
Okay, I second that. John,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Peter,
Nay,
Lisa,
Aye.
Cynthia.
Nay.
Okay. The motion carries.
Did you vote?
Oh, aye. Aye.
That doesn't mean we'll get permission to do it, but
Correct.
Right.
Right. And there's no obligation that people on this committee have to be there. They have the ability to go virtually as well.
So,
I don't know how we're gonna coordinate that, but that, that's obviously you're not gonna be denied from going to a meeting because you don't want to go in person. So you're obviously gonna be accommodated. I don't know how we technologically do that, but it will be done.
probably the same way we are right now.
Probably, yeah. We'd have to have a laptop there or whatever, or a computer there.
Well,
so
they're gonna have to make it available for, for the public anyway, so it will be there.
Yeah. I'm just trying to accommodate as many people as we can. I know some people are, my father wouldn't be able to get on the Zoom if he wanted to, so. So that's that one. Do we want to schedule a meeting after that meeting, or are we comfortable with just the one meeting for now?
I think we should try to at least get one or two more dates on the calendar. We can always modify it at our next meeting, but it's better that people have some ability to future plan than to try to do it only a week or two out.
Okay, that sounds good. Let's everybody grab their calendars.
So there isn't, you think that the meeting on the 18th will not happen?
no, will.
It will happen, but not in person. It'll be virtual again.
Okay,
And that was agreed at the last meeting that 7:30 would be the time that we would try to meet.
okay, super.
So the week after that's Thanksgiving.
Yep. So we should skip that week altogether.
So then we're into December. What are we thinking about Wednesdays? Is that,
I think we agreed as a group via email that 7:30 on Thursdays would be the
so
best
December
time.
2nd?
Yeah, so it'd be the 2nd, the 9th, and the 16th would be the Thursdays in December if we wanted to stick with the every week for now.
How's everybody think about that?
Can we do them at 7:30 rather than 8?
Yes, he said 7:30 on Thursdays.
Okay,
I think that was just, somebody had mentioned just that one time they wanted to do it at 8 today, but I think
okay.
maybe 7:30.
That actually was me. I actually have conflicts on every Thursday, including the one we've got this scheduled for our public hearing. A different night would definitely be better for me.
Okay. I'm just going to throw it out there. Is Wednesday good for everybody?
Wednesday's
I mean,
good.
sir,
At 7:30, right? Not 8.
Yeah.
7:30 on Wednesday, the 1st.
Yes.
Okay,
I'm going to go down the list
I'll
so we
do- I
get
can-
everybody on board. John, are you good for Wednesday at 7:30?
Aye.
Lee,
I can make it work.
Tim,
I have a conflict, but I have conflicts every day that week, so I'll make it work.
Are we saying just the 1st? Or are we saying the 1st, the 8th, and the 15th? So that way we can kind of pick a date to try to stick to.
how about we do the 1st and the 8th for now?
Okay. Those work for me. Just point, we were shooting for the 16th for a public comment session.
Right.
So I don't know if we're trying to stick to that, but just once we do the 1st and the 8th, we might want to circle back and just talk about when that public comment session should be.
Yeah.
Those are public hearings, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Again,
Correct.
let's do the 1st and the 8th first, and then we can do the public hearing.
Correct. Yeah, we gotta get there first. Yep. Peter, are you good for that, those 2 dates?
Yep.
Lisa
Yep.
and Cynthia.
Yes,
All right, so the next 2 dates are gonna be December 1st and December 8th at 7:30.
okay,
After next week's, yes.
And next week's still on the 18th, correct?
Mhm.
Correct. All right, so we got 3 meetings scheduled.
Yeah, and we had Sam Stivers helping encourage sorry, Peter, what's that called again? The public
Hearing.
Public hearing. You
a
you
public
should have
hearing.
enough notice. Need
We have
plenty of
to have-
notice.
Sorry, we need to have 3 of them. So we were trying to get one of them in this calendar year.
Right.
So,
We can talk about that at the next meeting. I'll put that on the agenda.
I'd like to put in people's bonnet that we move it from the 16th to the 15th.
You mean the 18th to the 17th?
I'm sorry. No, the public hearing from Thursday, December 16th, move it up a day to the Wednesday, the 15th.
Okay, if we would keep that, which we can discuss at next week's meeting.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we have to figure out how we go about advertising and, once we decide on the date and the time and, if there is going to be an in-person location, we've got a few kinks to work out before we get all that going, but we may have to, either advertise on the blogs or a signboard, or I don't know how we want to do it, but we want to do it in such a fashion that, we get some people showing up. So I'll put that in a future agenda that we can talk about it. So think about how you want to do it, and we'll discuss it at that point. The last thing I have is
There's 2 hands before we move off this topic. Chief Paulus and John both had their hand up a second ago.
sorry.
Go ahead,
Chief
John.
Paulus. Oh, I was just saying that we need to really close the loop next week, as you mentioned about this public hearing, because if we don't do it next week, it'll be the 1st, and that's 2 weeks' notice. So the reason I'm bringing the question up is, what's the format and all the details associated with actually scheduling that? I have no knowledge of how to do that or support that. So
I believe Sam mentioned that if we simply brought our list of criteria that we talked about today, and if we agree on that, we could simply bring that forward to a public hearing and allow the public to comment on if they support or don't support some of those things on the list, and that would count as one of the requirements, and it could help us call down the list if there was a need. So that's a thought. If we don't have a lot of details ready for that first session, we could at least share like maybe the outline of what we think we're leaning towards.
Yep.
Chief has his hand up as well.
Yeah. Go ahead, Chief.
Just next week, I have a conflict. I'm actually off using some personal time Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then also on December 1st, that Wednesday, I have a conflict. Certainly, I'd review the meetings, and I guess it's within the rules. If somebody had a question for me, I had a question of them to speak to one person at a time. Is that correct?
Yes. As long as there's no quorum involved.
Okay.
Yeah, it's tough to get everybody on one date. You're going to find that that's pretty common, but as long as we can get most of the voting members together. Does anybody else have any? I know we've done a lot today. It's 10 o'clock. Hopefully, we'll get this down pat. It'll go a little bit quicker next time. But Anybody have anything further they want to discuss? That's okay. So I'll put together, like I said before, an agenda for next week. If anybody wants anything special on the agenda, you can reach out to me, and that's fine to do that. Other than that, I'd like to take a vote on adjourning.
We have one more thing before we all
I see your
adjourn, I
hand.
believe. We do have public comment on the agenda. We have only a handful of attendees, but we at least have to hit it before we can move past it.
So that's part of the thing. That's part of the process that I don't see. So,
Yeah, so there's Jim Hegarty, Sam Stivers, and Chief Paulus are all in the attendee list. So I don't believe we have anybody else, but if any of them would like to speak, now's their opportunity.
okay.
And going once, twice. Okay.
All right. Well, we checked that box too. So, I'm gonna do. I know some people say we don't have to do this, but I feel more comfortable doing it. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Having been seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
I think we have to do a roll call, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna do a roll call. John,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Lisa,
Hi.
Cindy,
Aye.
and myself as well. Thanks, folks, for participating, and we'll see you at the
Yeah.
next meeting.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.